Hi everyone, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of July 22nd, 2019. First, let's do a quick recap of my predictions for the previous week. I made predictions for the stock market that it will go down on Monday through Wednesday and up on Thursday and Friday, and I was correct for the dates for the Tuesday through Friday predictions, but on Monday the market went actually up slightly. Ongoing predictions that I made were based on the Saturn conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, so this usually coincides with various geopolitical tensions, increased probability of earthquakes and serious accidents, disasters, epidemics, old buildings collapsing, accidents involve underground facilities or large sort of structures such as buildings and bridges, etc. So we had several large earthquakes, 5 and 6 plus. We didn't have any more major earthquakes, but continued aftershocks in California, some large earthquakes, I guess of note. One earthquake of note was in Greece that actually was fairly shallow and did prompt a lot of panic and evacuations, even though it was actually only 5.3, but I guess the fact that it was in a populated area and shallow made a difference. So as far as the epidemics, there was also news last week about the Ebola outbreak in Congo being declared a global health emergency. And by the way, I specifically predicted that the increased kind of peak days for such news of disasters, collapses, etc. Would be on July 16th through the 17th, as well as the 21st. And we did have news specifically on the 17th. AP reported that now more than 1,600 people have died since August in the second deadliest Ebola outbreak in history. There was also news on 7/16 about 4-story building collapsing in Mumbai and killing several people and leaving dozens, trapped. Of course, we have also continuing anti-government protests in Hong Kong, unfortunately, fairly brutal. And let's see, there's also ongoing set of predictions that have to do with the sort of currently slightly separated but ongoing square between Jupiter and Neptune. So this has to do with like long distance shipments, legal issues, immigration, as well as Neptunian issues, which would be oil, pollution, navy, water, chemicals, movies, religious places, etc. So, and combined with, like I said, ongoing Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the Capricorn, we can expect these kind of a difficult aspects and combination of the influence of these planets to, again, not only specifically result in epidemics, but epidemics that have to do with either triggered by pollution, for example, or something that's being transmitted via water or bodily fluids, which I guess Ebola is one of those. There was also news about a 4.5 million gallon sewage spill shutting down beaches in Washington, state of Washington in the US. And there was also on the 7/16 massive cocaine haul was found and concealed in the excavator of all things that was shipped from South Africa to Australia. So it is interesting because, again, sort of the shipment, international shipment that doesn't go well again, and in the shipment there's cocaine and something is illegal. That's definitely this square of Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter has to do with like international shipments and things that are legal or not legal, and Neptune has to do with, again, among other things, drugs, also shipments that are like especially overseas, over water. And the fact that this obviously didn't go well is because there's a square currently ongoing between these two transiting planets, so it's not favorable for long distance shipments and all related topics. And similarly, the fact that it was in the excavator of all things, that I believe definitely kind of highlights this signature of Saturn and Pluto being again conjunct and emphasizing their sort of influence, because both planets relate to things that are underground or something that needs to be dug up from underneath rocks, soil, etc. So I thought it was an interesting example. Let's see. Yeah, they also predicted that there will be increased focus on homeland security, especially midweek. And there were some, obviously, tensions between Iran and Great Britain, where I guess Iran had captured one of the tankers. Then UK was basically warning them about confiscating those tankers, and also then subsequently Iran had announced that they busted some CIA spies allegedly. So all of those basically fit definitely the definition, not definition, but rather the transit of Saturn and Pluto, where you have these geopolitical tensions, but also the fact that it happened over, like, again, involved water, navy, and oil, oil tankers. That is this kind of parallel signature of Jupiter and Neptune. So it's again another interesting example of sort of these aspects manifesting. There was also news about British Airways and Lufthansa canceling, or rather suspending, flights to Cairo for 7 days as a precaution to ensure safety and security of the passengers. So again, something that, again, a manifestation of the sort of concerns about the homeland security and security in general. And that's, again, another prediction that I made for last week. Let's see if I'm missing anything. Yes, curiously also there was prediction that I actually made for the previous week, but the news that I saw only came up last Monday. So the news came up on the 15th that starting on July 11th, the sort of European analog of GPS system, which is called Galileo, had begun experiencing some technical difficulties, and apparently subsequent news came up that it had to do with infrastructure on the ground. So again, problems with infrastructure, and which again, Saturn, Pluto together, they do demand sort of that things are rebuilt, old buildings are restored, grand sort of infrastructure projects are carefully monitored, or else, things may sort of basically be destroyed or collapse. And for last week, right when it started, I actually made prediction specifically for July 8th through 11th of increased news about airspace, IT, telecoms that may involve accidents, power loss, and services outage. And basically the reason I made that prediction for the last week or the previous week was that we had square between Uranus, which rules things like telecoms, power outages, sudden sort of service outages, abrupt power loss, etc., as well as airspace, and Mars, which was also conjuncting Mercury at the time, which has to do again with communications devices and vehicles, transportation, communication. And Mars, obviously in this square to Uranus, is something that often leads to like sudden, again, problems, outages, power losses, and or like fires, etc. So that's actually exactly what happened, unfortunately. And then lastly, I made predictions specifically for China with focus on July 16th, 17th, that there will be increased likelihood of important announcements related to investments as well as chemicals and pollution. And I did see there was news about on the July 17th, that Renault had invested 128 million euro in China's electric vehicle joint venture. And I also saw news, and that's not necessarily something that occurred last week, but rather I saw that there was a news article that came up on July 16th about in China Business Review, basically that specifically touched on the difficulties of sustaining the course sort of for China on its continued self-declared war and pollution, and at the same time kind of dealing with economic, according to the article at least, economic uncertainty. And specifically they're talking about a series, I guess, of explosions of the chemical plants in China, last of which had happened in March of 2019. So basically the article dealt with problems involving in chemical plants, explosions of the chemical plants, pollution, and sort of a dilemma of dealing with that, yet maintaining, I guess, economic growth. And like I said, it's not something that occurred last week, but the article came up during that time, so that was something that, you know, happened to be in the news, and it matches this signature of kind of events that I was expecting specifically for China. So on to this week's predictions. Same ongoing influences as before. Just to quickly recap, Jupiter square Neptune, focus on oil, navy, pharmaceuticals, religious places, chemicals, pollution, epidemics that involve again water or bodily fluids, Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn that may manifest as, again, continuing strong geopolitical tensions, sort of shifts in the governmental structure, shifts at the large corporation structure, so who is at the leadership, who is sort of in power, and also increased probability of landslides, earthquakes, some problems that involve underground facilities, nuclear power plants, and just disasters of all sorts that affect large numbers of people, again on the scale of like entire countries. There's also ongoing influence. Let's see. Yeah, this influence about these kind of problems and disasters and potential earthquakes, strong earthquakes, is the strongest this week on July 23rd. Let's see. And there was also global ongoing influence that focuses on increased probability of kind of important news related to banks and finance, as well as sort of public health, safety, and homeland security, and potentially waste polluting like farmlands or just land in general. And that's going to be continuing through 28th of July approximately. We did have, like I said, that spill of sewage in Washington state last week, but so this influence is still kind of on through about the July 28th, but after that this should sort of lessen. Let's see, and then we have continuing probability of increased earthquakes or various disasters or sort of events that focus on oil, navy, pharmaceuticals, pollution, secret deception, and long-distance transportation for China, as well as international agreements and expansion. And that's again something that's also happens to be an ongoing background influence for China, but this week specifically it may peak on July 20th through 22nd, where we may hear about either increased expenses, losses, or need to transform something, regenerate something, or some investments maybe in the large-scale construction project, or sort of talks about needing to repair infrastructure, or having to like save some old large building that maybe is about to crumple, or vice versa, start like maybe a large-scale project that is again going to be a huge investment in some really major important infrastructure, and or maybe funds being issued to repair damage after an earthquake. As far as the stock market for Monday, I give it about 60-65% probability of it going up, and I'm recording this actually on Monday, so at the end of the day I did see the market did go up. Important things to note for July 22nd through 26th, that there may be increased focus on immigration, international relations, long-distance transportation, especially in the areas sort of world that are hot. In general, focus on hot weather, especially the 23rd of July, as well as weapons, military laws, judges, politicians, actors, and other famous individuals, so people who are like on the stage somehow. There may be positive news about some projects related to this going well, so maybe some shipments are proceeding without delay, international negotiations actually result in some legal engagement, so it's not just negotiation, but it's actually something that's being signed and legalized, or maybe there's a sale of military and weapons, especially some sort of explosives, things that heat up and explode, or maybe there's a sort of increased number of shipments that involve again either military being sent to some bases, or weapons sales, or weapons being distributed somewhere, accumulated kind of more than usual, and without delay, maybe increased quantity of sort of international destinations to where they're going to be distributed, as in military personnel or weapons being sent to more destinations. Or maybe a famous actor or politician becomes or is featured in the news for publishing a popular book, or actors, politicians, or some famous people engaging in a project that's related to immigration or international negotiations, as well as actors and politicians engaging in some negotiations that relate to laws about weapons. And for areas that are currently experiencing a heat wave, unfortunately, this week will not bring you relief. If anything, things might actually go worse. So the hot weather may continue to spread. And like I said, the worst day may be the 23rd of July. And the hot weather may particularly be featured in the news in relation to like immigration or transportation, so maybe cars overheating, or maybe there's news about, illegal aliens dying in the truck where, because of the overheating and the AC is not on, so air conditioning problems, specifically in the transportation vehicles. And so the market may go up in general in that time on some sort of optimism about international negotiations proceeding well, and or there may be just some more aggressive investments, especially in multinational companies, and or in sort of businesses related to specifically military or weapons. That's for July 22nd through 26th. And now for the same dates, and especially for the 23rd, but now for the US in particular, there may be increased news about banks, financial institutions, investments, rates, taxes, and tariffs. We may hear about increased loans, debt, higher rates, higher tariffs, increased investments, and or increased value, particularly related, again, like I said, to banks, so maybe related stocks or sort of financial institutions reporting higher earnings. And also there may be increased news for the US about projects related to communication and transportation and international entities, so maybe increased tariffs on imported cars. And on the 23rd, however, the news may be somewhat unpleasant or stressful. So again, mostly related to transportation and or communication industries. So something along the lines of like a fire, explosion, or an accident, and or maybe a price of a related, say vehicle or service or, some sort of communication device goes up, and that elicits, or maybe it doesn't perform well because, again, there are these accidents reported, fires or something like that, like batteries overheating. And so one way or the other, there may be anger from the public over some communication and or transportation, either service or company that's either producing those or offering such service. So for China, for July 22nd, 26th, especially again the 23rd, seems to be an important day, there's going to be increased focus on international relations, contracts, and agreements. There may be some really intense negotiations where there may be discussed in particular sales or purchase of some weapons, build-up of weapons, show of strength, some sort of military posturing or military, activities, or the country may even feel attacked either through aggressive negotiations. So the pressure by some negotiation, like basically putting pressure on them, and or literally feeling like they are facing military threat. So there may also be increased news about fires, explosions, accidents, fast-moving objects that heat up. So some sort of a car engine overheats, or train is moving too fast to the point that it just can't take that. Or again, transportation, service has an issue with the AC basically outage, and so again things overheat. And or on the positive sort of manifestation could be that there's just increased focus on racing and sports in general, and it's just heat in that sense is kind of excitement over those, and that area receives greater attention from, for example, investors. So Tuesday, I think the 23rd, like I said, is going to be an important day. But I think the market will, even though there may be some stressful news for some, like I said, maybe communication, transportation industries in the US, but overall I think there is 60-65% chance that market will go up. Wednesday, similarly, I think the market may go up, but here I'm not as certain, only about 55% chance. Then on Thursday, I think that the market may actually go down 50 to 60%, 55 to 60%. And on Thursday, there may be increased focus on financial institutions, banks, earnings, and currencies, especially digital currencies. There may be some concerns about either stability or volatility due to some changes. So maybe these changes are implemented to kind of lock things down, to improve security, reduce volatility, improve sort of security of the savings, to protect the savings. But these changes may unnerve investors potentially, and so the market may go down. Friday, I think again will be another up day, 55 to 60%. And so additionally, I made some predictions kind of for the following week just because I saw some important transits. So for China, July 26th through 31st, especially the 29th of July, there may be increased focus on international relations, contracts, and agreements. And these negotiations may involve power plays, manipulations, blackmailing, spying, hidden threats, so hacking, things like that. So some sort of underhanded methods to basically either China is going to employ in those, or whoever they're negotiating with, their partner may engage in such activities. And or there may be increased news about just sales and purchase of weapons, especially nuclear, buildup of weapons, again, especially nuclear, recycling, facilities, as well as waste, dealing with waste. And in general, there may be show of strength, and or country, again, may feel like they need to sort of defend themselves from an aggressor, but this time compared to, sort of what would have been previous few days, this aggressor may be, or the attack may be underhanded, hidden, and sort of harder to deal with. There may also be increased news about some sort of negotiations and agreements that may particularly involve, again, either weapons or military. So globally, for July 28th through 29th, so that's Sunday and the following Monday, there may be some surprise developments, some sudden unexpected events related to finance, currencies, again, especially e-currencies, as well as politicians, actors, and prominent leaders, prominent persons, some celebrities. And or there may also be increased focus in the news on the airspace, like telecoms, IT, as well as gold and solar power. So there may be potentially an escalation of international situations that involve transportation, oil, water, navy, airplanes, and weapons. So again, either some disturbance, potentially, again, something along the lines of that GPS system, or something along the lines of that not working, and so it's disturbing the transportation, or some kind of a sudden fluctuation in value of like bank stocks or currency value fluctuations, and this could be related to again, also affect the price of gold, for example, and or there may be some sudden surprising situation involving like these prominent leaders, celebrities, etc. There may also be some issue with international transportation or communication, where there may be delays, disconnect, conflict, again, problems with service, and this may involve, again, just simple accidents, or it may involve actual weapons, explosives, fires, or some regulations and laws, and maybe suddenly, as we saw actually, I didn't actually put this down on my blog at tolstonka.com, but it just occurred to me that maybe it would be something along the lines of, airline suspends service to a particular location because, again, of some problems with explosive fires. Either something is overheating and they're just trying to be safe, or there's some sort of a conflict, international conflict, and so that disrupts the transportation or communication with, involving that area. And somehow either it may affect prominent leaders or actors or celebrities may somehow be involved in that. So, and in general, I guess the entire week of July 29th, I see increased focus on such prominent individuals. So anybody who is kind of important in and of themselves, so a leader of the country or a famous, like I said, musician, actor, politician, just some sort of a YouTube celebrity, who knows, may be featured more prominently, again, that they do something unexpected, or they maybe suffer some sort of a loss, or they're involved in fires, explosions, or suffer from hot weather, which makes me think, I wonder, because of the heat wave in the US, if there will be increased fires in California specifically, and that would affect maybe specifically some Hollywood celebrities there. And so lastly, following Wednesday and Thursday, so we're talking about July 31st through August 1st, there may be some more surprise developments related to, again, financial industry, currencies, banks, earnings, as well as, again, politicians, actors, some famous folks, and as well as possibly aerospace and gold. So maybe somebody's flying, like a famous person's flying, and something happens and they're in the news because of that. And or there may be, again, some fluctuations in the value of currencies, especially digital currencies, and that again affects price of gold. Those things happen sort of in the same time, but there may be surprise as far as like sort of the degree of the fluctuation or the direction may be surprising, and this may occur due to some unforeseen developments. So for example, earnings estimates may be off, or currency suddenly loses value due to concerns about its stability, or some famous, again, person may lose suddenly large sum of money. So again, it could be if they're, say, in California, there's a fire, and maybe their, rent or something burns down, or they have invested in some sort of digital currency, and suddenly there's some sort of fluke and they lose money, or maybe they're involved, again, in a delay and they're stuck somewhere in an international location, and that's unexpected, and it causes them financial loss, and they're complaining more, vocally, and they're featured in the news, or something along those lines. So that's it, and that's, again, just a quick preview of the following week. This week, I would say focus on July 23rd as far as meaningful events, but overall the market looks up, and other than the heat wave in the US, I guess everything seems to be going well in the world for the most part, right? Except some places where things are not going so well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed these predictions, and we'll come back for more. You can also check them out on my blog at tolstunka.com. I usually post a written blog the day before I post these videos. So I hope you'll come back and check me out later. So see you guys next week. Bye.